Welcome to Concept to Creation, a podcast featuring entrepreneurs who share their business journey. We'll hear what motivated them to turn their dreams into a business. They'll share stories from the trenches of business, from raising capital, creating products or services, navigating regulations, hiring employees, and managing competition and growth. We'll discover their successes and failures, and they'll provide advice for budding entrepreneurs. Now, here's your host and fellow entrepreneur, Mike Conrad.
Welcome to this debut episode of Concept to Creation. Thank you so much for being here. Actually, it's a rather strange feeling because we pre-record these, and I'm keenly aware of the fact that as of this particular moment, there are no visitors, there are no subscribers, so I'm thanking nobody at the moment. But by the time this airs, hopefully there'll be a few subscribers, and I do thank you for being one of them. The purpose of the show, or the theme of this show, is to address one of my favorite subjects, which is entrepreneurship. And I am an entrepreneur. I've owned and operate a business. It's going on 30 years old. Next year we'll have our 30th anniversary. So I've passed that dreaded 10-year mark where the National Bureau of Labor Statistics states that 75% of all businesses fail within their first decade. So I think when you pass that 10-year mark, you feel a little bit like a survivor. And we're going to talk about entrepreneurs, what their story is, what, battles from the trenches, stories from the trenches. There's a big difference between what people think owning a business is like and what owning a business is really like. In fact, there's a huge difference between those two. So we're going to get into that with our guests, and we're going to talk about their journey, their inspiration, where they muster up the courage, where they see something that perhaps no one else has seen before, and they see an opportunity and they exploit it. So we're going to talk about their journey, how they came up with an idea, how they came from concept to creation, and then how they manage growth and competition and cash flow and employees and customers and all of that. And we're going to find out what motivates them. And then hopefully, near the end of our discussion, we'll ask our guests about what advice they could give to budding entrepreneurs based upon their years of experience and based upon their successes and their failures. And we'll kind of come out with the net result of all that. So my first guest, I'm very thrilled and honored that he agreed, and I didn't even owe him money. He decided to do this anyway. Is Dr. Bill Cardoso from Creative Electron. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks for the invitation, Mike. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Let me explain to my audience who you are. Well, first of all, none of this will be on your official bio, but we've known each other for a little while now. We are fellow equipment manufacturers. We're fellow entrepreneurs, business owners. We're fellow board members on the SMTA Global Board of Directors. We are fellow podcasters, and kind of. I have a podcast. You have your fireside chat. So both of us are utilizing a kind of a popular, growing medium in our industry. And both of us are car enthusiasts. So there you go.
True.
Yeah. So I think you win in that department. Bill likes, this is another show for another topic, but Bill likes to take classic cars and rip out their engines and put in electric motors. So he's basically turning classic cars into like Teslas, or maybe even more than Teslas. So someday I need to get to your ranch and see that collection. Don't you have like a Model T didn't you do that to a Model T or a Model A or something?
Exactly, a Model A. I'm in the process of doing that to a Cobra, to a 65 Cobra. Yeah. Wow,
that's amazing. Well, if we can ever catch up to you, we'll have to see those shows. So, I think it's safe to describe Bill as an overachiever, and I mean that in a complimentary sense. So, let me just give a little bit of your background, your educational background, because I find it exceptionally impressive. You got a degree, I assume it's your associate's degree, as an electronics technologist from Occidental Schools. Now, tell my audience how old you were when you got that, because I don't think it was a typical AA age.
Yeah, I started when I was 11 and a half, and I was done by the time I was 13.
13 years old, and you have your AA degree. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And then you went on and got your bachelor's in electrical engineering, in electrical and computer engineering, actually. And then you moved to the U.S. That was in Brazil, right?
That was in Brazil. Yeah.
Yes. And then you moved to the United States, and you went to the Illinois Institute of Technology, where you got your master's in the same subject. And then, that not being quite enough, you stayed on for your PhD, also in electrical and computer engineering. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. And where most people would stop there, but not Bill. Bill decided that wasn't quite enough. There was still this much room left on the bottom of his signature.
Yeah.
So you went to the University of Chicago Booth School of Business and got your MBA. So from a educational standpoint, you were exceptionally qualified to start a business. Now here's the first question. How much of that education really prepared you for the startup phase of a business? Now, obviously, you could read a spreadsheet. Obviously, you can predict cash flow. You got all those tricks down. But how much of that, your first year of business, how many times did you go, thank God I had that education? Or was that useful later in your business?
It's a very good question. My career right after. So when I went to school for my master's, PhD, and MBA, I was going to school part-time, nights and weekends, while working at Fermilab, which is a particle accelerator right outside Chicago. And a lot of people don't know that part of my story, but right after, or I was in the process of graduating from my MBA, I took a job here in San Marcos to work for a small business and to work as VP of technology. And 2 months into my tenure on that business, the founder and the owner of the business, who was also the CEO, he passed away. He had a heart attack. He was 52 years old. It was a huge surprise. And I remember I reached out to one of my professors and in business school, and I told him, wow, this is an experience, because now I'm running that company, right, from 2 months into the job, and I'm running the company in a very unexpected way and very sad way. So I reached out to him and I said, well, that's definitely something school doesn't prepare us for. And his reply was, that's exactly what school prepares you for, right? Because not only, the education gives you a toolbox to reach when you need it, but most importantly, gives you a network, a group of people that you can reach out to and tap into whenever you need. And those are, that's irreplaceable. And people do it with education or without education, right? There's, I'm sure you have the experience as well. There's no straight line to entrepreneurship, right? We all get in kind of shoved in a different ways, and we just get in this road and we keep on going, right?
That's right. I don't think anyone, well, a few people probably were, but I don't think in my case, and perhaps not yours, and perhaps yours, I don't think we were born and our first thought after, feed me and change my diaper was I want to start a business, right?
Exactly.
I didn't intend to start a business. It just happenstance. It's just all these, it's like a pinball machine. The ball just bounces off all the bumpers and things, and it ends up where it ends up. That was my case. What age were you when you first started having some entrepreneurial thoughts?
So the first company I started, very unofficially, was GCC Corporation when I was in Brazil. I was 10. Because I started playing with electronics when I was 9. That quickly went from a hobby to an obsession.
I just want to make sure I heard this right. You were 10.
I was 10.
When you started your first company.
Yeah, so I was making dimmers, light dimmers. For
like rheostat type dimmers or solid state type. So you were making light dimmers. So how does a 10-year-old in Brazil, knowing that, if you went to your hardware store in any country, it's probably filled with GE products and the like, with a million different things what made you think I want to do it and I could do it differently or better than established companies?
So that's what we learn about access to sales channels, right? That's what the dimmer itself was a project I found in Electronics magazine. And I figured out that I could build very inexpensively. And it was amazing because my COGS was zero, right? My parents were paying for everything. So my profit was infinite, right?
Early investors, huh?
Exactly. Divide by zero. It's infinite profitability. So that was a great deal. Never got that again. So I took that project and I made, I think first batch was maybe 20 or 25. And I bought a little project box and inlet, outlet, and I sold at school, family, friends, and that's how it all started. And that gave me that taste for the connection to a need, right? And being able to go from an idea to filling somebody's needs and fixing a problem, right? Solving a problem. And that never got away from me. And I'm sure you have the same bug, right? Is that ability to link something that's in your head, right? A solution idea to something can actually provide people. And that's fascinating.
Yeah, I've long thought that the people who invent technology are rarely the people who profit from that technology.
Correct.
Unfortunately, in English, I think there's only one word that could be used for this, and that's called exploit. And a lot of times that's a negative connotation. It really is contextual. In this case, it's not negative. I think the exploiters of technology are the ones who really benefit from it economically. I look at Apple. The idea of the mouse came from
Correct.
Xerox Labs. The technology park. It didn't come from Apple, but Steve Jobs walked by and said, "That's a good idea. I can use that." And even the whole window type graphic user interface didn't originate conceptually from Apple. They saw it in another application and realized its value probably more than the original inventor did. In your case, at 10 years old, building dimmers, you didn't invent the dimmer.
No.
You found a need or a sales channel or something that you could exploit and do well in, right? So I think it's the exploiters. I wish there was a better word for that, but that really benefit from all this new technology.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's there's a lot of misconception about entrepreneurship, right? My favorite misconception is that every overnight success takes 10 years to happen, right? Now, because people think that companies become successes overnight. The exploitation is another interesting one. People don't understand that there is a huge amount of value inventing a technology, coming up with the idea, but in Steve Jobs' case, his genius was in connecting those ideas to deployed devices. That's huge. That's huge. And that's one word that you keep coming back when you talk about entrepreneurship, which is execution. It doesn't matter if you have a good idea. It doesn't matter if you have all the funding. If you can't execute on that idea, if you can execute on that invention, you don't have anything. Right?
Yeah, I know when I was younger, I would see an advertisement for something and I go, I invented that. I thought about that 10 years ago.
You didn't do anything with it. So.
Of course, the only reason I remembered is I saw someone did something with it. But how many times, do we invent things in our head and lack the execution? I think that's what separates dreamers from entrepreneurs. Is Correct. Entrepreneurs learn to execute and dreamers dream. Nothing wrong with that, but
nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
they're not going to get far.
It's all about your ability and willingness to put the work on it, and it's a lot of grit that goes into it. And if you don't have it, you become a dreamer, right? You become an ideator because it's an uphill battle, right? Everything is against you. The odds, like you said, 75% of business fail within the first decade. The odds, everything is stacked against this idea. And of course, it helps a lot when you don't know all that, right? It's much easier to start when you don't know how hard it's going to be, right? So you just keep on going. And then you realize...
Ignorance is bliss.
Exactly. You look back like, wait a minute, I've done something here, right? We've survived.
I'm glad you said that because that was my experience. I know a whole lot more now than I did then, and I'm thankful I didn't know then what I know now, because I wouldn't have started the business, not because I regret it. No part of my business journey do I regret. I think if I knew how close to the edge, how close to business death we were so many times over the last 30 years, that would have scared me. And, there's a certain safety factor in showing up, punching a clock, getting a check. Yeah. And, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to have control of your own destiny, really the only way to do that is to go off on your own. And it is not for the faint at heart. That's for sure. So
it's not.
I think what makes entrepreneurs is this, and we talked about this before, you and I think we have a lot of traits. Entrepreneurs have some common traits, and one of them is a very lousy assessment of risk, right? Where someone might say 75% of all businesses fail. An entrepreneur will look and go, well, 25% don't. Yes, and exactly. I'm smarter than 75% of the other, of the world. I'm not me, but someone might say that and go, well, so I have a better chance than others. So we just don't see risk. We see reward, perhaps, but we don't see risk. You talk about what people think entrepreneurship is like. It reminds me of those memes. Like, this is what my parents think I do. Yeah. This is what my friends think I do. This is what I really do. And there's three completely separate, things. Yeah. I know I've had people come up to me, my friends, over the few decades we've been doing this, and they go, wow, I wish I was self-employed, because if I was self-employed, I can take as much time off as I want. It must be nice. You can do this, just write yourself a check. You can go shopping with the company credit card, all these. Yeah. And the truth is you can, but you will end up out of business and probably in tax trouble. But it's just funny to
part
see.
Part of the 75%. Yeah.
Exactly. That's probably a big part of the 75%. So what, were you're in a very niche-y business right now. I mean, within your world, you probably don't consider it niche because you have plenty of competition. But in the greater scheme of things, you're in a very specific part of the EMS world, which is X-ray with your creative Electron. So did you have, you don't just, have a summer job in college and learn all about X-ray, right? Exactly. I can tell you how to flip a burger because, I had those jobs through school, but I didn't have any X-ray experience or defluxing experience in my case. So did you have any experience in the X-ray world prior to founding Creative Electron?
Prior to founding Creative Electron, I was working at this particle accelerator called Fermilab, like I said before, in right outside Chicago. And what we did that was build very sophisticated multi-billion-dollar X-ray cameras. Not only X-ray, but also gamma rays and other subatomic particles. So that experience gave me a lot of background, 10 years of background on radiation detection and developing of different technologies, developing of semiconductors for radiation detection. The things we do here are definitely not as complex as the large experiments that we had at Fermilab. And then I also work in experiments at CERN. One of them was the experiment that discovered the Higgs boson. So I was doing that in a very much more in-depth perspective. Less quick books, much more research than I do right now. So in a way, the machines we make at Creative Electron, these are X-ray imaging systems. They're fairly, straightforward. And the excitement, what really gets me excited is the variety of customers we have and the variety of things that we are inspecting on a daily basis, right? So just this morning, I was looking at a crankshaft plate from a Harley Davidson, right? And looking for porosity, looking for air bubbles and cracks and things like that. So, like a good entrepreneur, I have a very short attention span, and it really gets me going is having something different every day. And we've been doing this now for almost 13 years, and I'm still on board. So I think it's a very good sign.
I think ADD is a required element to be an entrepreneur because you have to see everything that's
that I have, ADD.
Yeah, my daughter says, she says, there's a reason ADD and dad have the same letters.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to use it. That's perfect.
So in the world of real estate, they say the three most important rules of real estate are location, 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 right?
Yeah.
In the world of business, it's cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. In fact, cash flow probably at some point in your business life even trumps profit, right? Because you could be making profit and not have any money. Remember the Beatles song? You never give me your money, you only show me your funny paper.
Exactly.
You might be making tons of money on paper, but you have no cash, right? So it's all tied up in inventory and accounts receivable and all that. So where did you find, I'm assuming you didn't just sell enough dimmer switches to invest in Creative Electron. So how did you go about raising funds to start this endeavor?
No, it's a very good question, a very good point. I've seen more businesses die of indigestion than starvation, right? It's more common for business to die because they take too much than not having enough. I was very fortunate that in my tenure at Firmalab, I got involved with a program called SBIR, which is Small Business Innovation Research. And so when I started Creative Electron, I utilized this funding instrument from the US government to get the business going. So with SBIR, if people are not familiar, these are solicitations. They're topics that US government, and we're talking about the US military, NSF, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and the NIH. Each of these organizations, they set aside a good amount of funds, and every so often, twice a year, once a year, depends on the agency, they release this set of topics, set of problems, if you will, that they're having. For example, the Navy might have an issue with the carbon fiber on a flap of F-35 delaminating at high velocity, right? So they were going to put the topic and say, hey, industry, it has to be small businesses, right? And anyone out there knows how to solve this problem. And if you think you have a solution, you write a 30-page proposal and you say, you know what, this is how I'm going to solve the problem. You write a proposal, and if they like your proposal, they will fund you for phase one. It's usually $100,000, $150,000, again, depending on the agency. And if you do a good job on phase one, which is 6 months long, they're going to fund you to a second phase that's $1 million. And so I was able to get a few of those very early in the story of in history of the company, and that was the seed money to start Creative Electron.
And that probably answers, to a certain degree, a question I had asked earlier, which is how much did your education play in your role of starting a company? You started off with an incredible amount of credibility to
correct, yes,
for a grant or to investors, right? As opposed to someone with this wild idea but no experience and no education, right? So, yeah, that definitely helped a lot.
Yeah, it does help a lot. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, and that's why we still don't have any investors at Creative Electron. I was able.
Nice now, right? I mean, yeah, when you're a young company, you're almost willing to sell your soul, to get a few bucks.
Absolutely,
VCs but no one
or guaranteeing. That's the problem.
Right.
You have no buyers.
Right. Exactly. I remember once, several years ago, one of my employees. This was after a company was probably 15 years old at the time, and one of my employees came up and said, "I want to invest in the company." I'm like, "Dude, where were you 15 years ago?" Right? I mean, not that we were like large and successful or rolling in cash after 15 years, but I didn't need to give a piece of my company away for money I didn't actually need, right? And he got very offended. And I'm like, the time to invest is when the company needs it most, because they're willing to pay the most, in terms of shares or equity or whatever. And he just didn't understand that, relationship between need and capital, right? So we make deals that we may regret later, but that's good to be in that position now. So you started your business in 2008. Other than maybe 1929, I can't think of a worse time to start a business. At the beginning of what our grandkids will be taught in school is the Great Recession, right? We all learned about the recession, about the Depression in the 20s and 30s. You started in the Recession. So is that good to start at the worst time because everything else is just better, or did it really not matter?
It's hard to tell because the previous company that I had started was in Brazil, so it was a very different, economic landscape. What I can tell you is that 2008 was a very difficult year, and for those who don't remember or maybe didn't experience that economic recession, unlike COVID, which was also very tough, very hard, a huge economic impact. That in 2008, the financial markets crashed, and more than that, access to capital disappeared, right? Because the real estate bubble burst, and all of a sudden, banks were upside down. So one of the things the U.S. government did is to shift more money towards incentive to small businesses, right? So the SBIR program that I was telling you about got more money. So we were able to access that money in an easier way. The other great thing that I see, there are three things. So access to capital was the capital that we were looking for, right? Which is not a bank. I know if I went to a bank and I tried, no one would even touch me, right? Because we're small, we have no history. Starting a business, no way. Everyone's going bankrupt. So that access to that capital was easier and then helped. The second aspect was access to talent. A lot of companies, especially in San Diego, were downsizing. A lot of the telecom were firing people, in a very fast pace. So we were able to get talent that we wouldn't be able to get otherwise because it wouldn't be available and wouldn't be able to reach to that talent. And the third aspect that really helped was to keep us lean, right? And we keep that until today. Companies prior to that, if you were, when you start a company and everything's going great, you have a tendency of just accumulating more, get more people than you need, right? And we started from day zero being extremely lean, right? We still are, right? And I think those three components kept ingrained in the DNA of the company and have been, I think, fundamental to help us grow.
Yeah.
So when we saw 2020, we were like, wow, 2008 was so much worse. I mean, except of course the deaths and the horrible things happening with the virus. But from an economic perspective, we've seen much worse.
Yeah, I think the EMS industry has fared pretty well.
Yeah,
some have benefit. I hate to use the word benefit when so many people die, but
too.
some have flourished during this time, and some have kind of remained just stable. Maybe a few were negatively affected, but our industry is essential, and not just in words, but really in reality, it's essential.
Correct.
So, we did see call it a 3-week to 30-day deer in the headlights. When California shut down, we were one of the first states to shut down, and then other states rapidly followed. I think the entire industry just stood saying, okay, we'll take 3 weeks off and, we'll get back to business. And when it became quite evident that the lockdowns weren't going away, I think everyone just in unison, almost like a symphony, just started playing again. They just picked up their instruments and started playing again at the same time. And it was a very short and scary few weeks or 30 days or so after the shutdown first happened. But we weren't clear right away if we could send our employees to work, if they would get arrested in the car, on their way to the office. And no one knew what was going to go on. So besides a historic recession and just all the and trying to get funding and all of that, what were other challenges that you and your business faced the first several years? I don't know if any of them are unique to your industry, or if they're just business common challenges, but what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Well,
the ones you're willing to talk about.
Yeah, there are lots. I have so many that I'm trying to figure out which one to start with.
Figure out the top 3 challenges.
Yeah, because I know this is not a mini series, right? I mean, we're gonna stop talking at some point.
Welcome to episode 97 of Bill's Challenges. Yes,
and I still have quite a few of those. I think the early days, cash flow is a major challenge. What I'm talking about is making payroll, right? In the very early days, when you don't really know where payroll is coming from. We had a nice base in the beginning from these SBIR grants, and we're able to get money for a specific period of time, but they ended, right? And if you don't have the next one to take you over the next gap, you are in trouble. For us, one of the major challenges that we had was transitioning from those grants to being a product company, from being a manufacturing company that can survive selling X-ray machines. That was a huge transition for us that almost broke us, right? We almost didn't make it because our revenue went, we're going with the grants, and then the grants disappeared and the sale of machines ramp up. And then we're making X-ray machines in Southern California, right? And it's extremely challenging. I don't know anybody else doing it. It's just, it's a very, very regulated place to be. And it's, luckily, the city of San Marcos has been phenomenal, helping us through some of the local issues and the regulatory issues and, fire code and things like that. And then the other challenge to the business is the founder, right? And all the bad ideas we have. In my case, no, I shouldn't say we, that I have. And I've had plenty of bad ideas. And luckily, I was able to get around me an amazing team that doesn't listen to me all the time. And so not all my bad ideas get executed. But seriously, you're the same. We're creative people, and we see potential in things that sometimes don't happen. And we've had ventures and products that didn't work out, and it's not easy to kill something, right? I mean, I should say it's very easy to kill something that fails right away, right? It's very easy to keep something alive that is a success. It's tough when you have those lingering, right, ideas or products or companies, and it's a pain. You want to keep going. It's kind of making money, but it's just a distraction, right? And
it's easier to kill something when it's not your idea. It is harder to kill something that is your idea because there's ego involved. I think all entrepreneurs, maybe there's some exceptions, but I don't think so. Start off, you have to have a certain amount of ego, right? Yeah. To say, I can do that better, or I am thinking of something that no one else has ever thought of, or I can make this work. I can be the 25% that make it. There's got to be a lot of self-confidence, which kind of comes across as ego. And I think that you can't start a company without a certain amount of that. And you can't sustain a company with too much of that, right? There's got to be this kind of shift from ego and stamina and grit and stubbornness to something more savvy, as you grow. Tell me about some of your less successful endeavors. You don't have to get into specifics, but were they like a type of machine or an application that just you thought was great and maybe the world just wasn't ready for it yet? Or
well, we had we came up, we developed, and we actually ended up with a patent on it, radiation detector that connects your iPhone. So it was a really cool idea. It had an app connected to it, and so that you could GPS and tag the measurements you were making. In Japan, this was during Fukushima, so Japan were able to map radiation all over Japan. So as you're driving with the device on your phone, you can actually tag and see how much radiation was around you. and it didn't have a battery because we connected to the audio jack of the phone. So the app we developed would generate sound out of your audio jack. We take that sound, the energy from the audio jack, to create 600 volts for the Geiger counter on your phone. And that was great, super exciting, but very distracting. It's one of those ideas where we were making money, but not a lot of money.
Yes.
You know, but it's like, it's exciting, but it's taking all my time doing that. And I have to sell X-ray machines at the same time. And eventually we just divested of that idea and moved on. Yeah. And then Apple got rid of the audio jack, and there goes my idea, right?
Right. Now, yes, exactly.
I
had a similar experience. We build cleaning equipment for removing flux and other contaminant species from circuit boards. And, I got this idea once that we can build a golf club cleaner using ultrasonic energy for the heads. And we had this chemical that you could put on the grips, and it would restore the tackiness. It would restore the rubberness of the grip, so they felt like brand new grips.
That's pretty cool.
And everyone said, "This is great. This is wonderful. Oh, will you buy it?" Well, no, but it's cool, right? So I remember we ended up getting rid of the ultrasonic cleaner because we realized that although it was a great technology, the golf shop pros make money cleaning their patrons' clubs. And when we offered a machine with a $5 bill acceptor on it, they lost money. So we didn't have the support for that. So we learned that lesson. And then so we ended up selling this pre-saturated microfiber towel with a special chemical that you can wipe on your grips, and it just restored them, made them like brand new again, almost sticky, right? Mm-hmm. And we ran a radio commercial on a local sports station and sat by the phones, and they didn't ring. So then we thought, it's a visual thing. So we ran a TV commercial on a local cable channel in San Diego during a large golf tournament. And a couple of people called, but they were basically insurance people wanting to sell us insurance services or whatever. And we gave away a bunch of cases to about 20 or 30 golf courses just for them to give out as samples. And then we set up a website. You could buy the stuff online. And one day I came into the office and I opened up my email and I found out we sold $300 worth of these little jars of golf grip cleaner. Yeah. And I was so excited. I'm like, yes, I made $300 in my sleep. This is great. And I was so excited. And then my sales manager came in and said, we just got this $82,000 order. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm playing in the dirt when they're playing in gold, right? What am I doing? Yeah. And that was it was the perfect timing for someone to just hit me over the head with reality and go, you and I are both fans of Jim Collins, the author who wrote Good to Great. And I think you had recently on Phil Stoughton's show talked about the 20-mile march. Right. Yeah. And in Good to Great, he talks about, whatever you decide to do, even if it's just one thing, honestly be able to say with all the confidence in the world that you're the best in the world at it. Be the best at dimmers. Be the best at X-ray. Be the best at cleaners. And I realized that this golf grip cleaner was a commodity. And if it did become successful, Callaway and Ping and all the Titleist, they'll all come out with their version of it, and it'll just be an also-ran. So that was a big lesson for me. And it sounds like you too. You created something that everyone was kudos, interesting, but they had no. Unless you live in Fukushima or parts of the Ukraine, you don't really have a lot of need for it, right? Or working in an industrial job, I guess, that has radiation.
Yeah, but it's one of the traps, right? I mean, you talk to future or people who want to become entrepreneurs, and I laugh every time somebody tells me, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to tell you something, but it's a secret, so I don't know if I should tell you." I'm like, really? I mean, most business idea, I've never heard a business idea that was so unique, so secretive that, if it's that unique, then no one thought about it because no one's going to buy it, because it's just a bad idea. And very likely somebody in the past already tried it, did not succeed. And that's why you can't find it today, because it was a bad idea in the first place, right? Most business ideas, and that's what people don't realize, people should not stress out about finding the next spark, the next, Post-it note, because you know what? Very likely the person who invented that, like you said before, didn't make money out of that, right? What you have to find is you have to look for inefficiencies in places where you can do better, you can execute better, right? You look at all these successful companies out there. Facebook didn't invent social media. Amazon didn't invent delivery. Google didn't invent search. Why they're successful? They were able to make it frictionless. They made it easier for people to get what they want. That's why Elon Musk is so successful. Why? Because he's a genius at removing friction. He's a genius with PayPal. They made it easier for companies to grab money from your pocket. That's why he's so successful at Tesla. He made it very easy for people to access electric cars, right? So it's not about that great idea. Figure out how to execute something better. And that's it. That's what I did. That's what you did, right? You figure out a way to make cleaning machines better and easier for people to access. I'm trying to make it easier for people to x-ray their stuff, whatever it is, right?
So let's talk about x-ray. You build x-ray equipment. Other companies do. I'm not going to name them all, but you know who they are. And I think our industry knows who they are. And they all build essentially, I'm not going to say the same thing because I know there's a lot of intricacies with the type of tube and all that, but they all build basically machines that perform a similar function, right? Can see through a BGA, for example.
Correct.
So if we can just kind of agree for the sake of discussion that all x-ray machines are the same, which I know they're not, but just for the sake of discussion, they're all the same. What sets Creative Electron apart? What you ever see these images with all these white ping pong balls and one red ball in the middle, right? You can get those on iStock or whatever.
Exactly.
What makes Creative Electron that red ping pong ball in a sea of white ping pong balls?
Correct. Yeah, set us aside from the commodity, right? So we talked about growth earlier, and in my experience, if you drive your team to get growth, you're going to get growth. You might not get good growth, right? You're going to get the bad deals and no one else gets, and you're going to get them. So one of the things set us aside, we qualify, or at least we try to qualify our customers as much as they qualify us. We're passionate for what we do. We're geeks, we're nerds, and we love X-ray technology. We see beyond the BGA, the QFN, and the solder void that people are looking for. We see what we try to do is go beyond and figure out why those things happen, right? We go for the why, and we layer that nowadays with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we try to use the X-ray as a tool to help people improve their process, right? We don't stop at the grayscale image. Our vision is that one day you don't even have to look at the grayscale image. The machine is going to be able to tell you that your stencil was broken or that your printer is not calibrated correctly, right? That's what we're going for. That's our grand vision for the future. So, and some customers appreciate that and they want to work with us. Some customers are looking for the best deal in the market and the lowest dollar. And it's not us. I'm the first to say that if they're looking for the lowest price, Alibaba and other websites are available, and you can just go ahead and buy machines directly from there and go for it. Working with us is much like working with Acus, right? You're working with a team of passionate people. We are in California, so we're not by any means the lowest cost provider, but we are the highest value provider to our customers.
I read an article when the recession happened, 2008, 9, 10, 11, depending on what business you're in.
Yeah.
What businesses thrived during the recession, or at least didn't fail. And they were talking about retail stores. And the stores that did the best were the Nordstrom, the Saks Fifth Avenue, the high-end retail stores.
Correct.
They did well. The middle, the Targets and slightly
Walmart.
higher up. Walmart is they're probably the lower,
Walmart.
but the let's not say Target. Let's say let's make it like Macy's and
Correct.
Those types of companies that are in the middle, right? They really suffered. And the businesses that were in the bottom really did well. So the top and the bottom did well.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if you're going to go into a business, if you want to be the low price leader, say you want to be the Amazon. I mean, they make plenty of money. Jeff Bezos is one of the richest people in the world. It takes billions to be able to make money off a 3 or 4% profit margin. Most mere mortals like us can't afford the infrastructure to be able to be that efficient, to be the low price leader. So everyone is afraid to start off at a high price because you're almost embarrassed to charge a high price for your stuff. So everyone migrates to the middle, which I think is part of the 75% of businesses who fail in 10 years. It's because they're all in the middle. You can't stand out in the middle. There's no differentiation being in the middle. You are with thousands of other similar companies and similar people, and you don't stand out. So you either go high or you go super low. And since most entrepreneurs can't afford to go super low, to be able to invest what Amazon did and Walmart did and others like that, we go to the top. And that's where we started. I look at when I started my company, I was in our industry, working for somebody, so I kind of had an advantage. But I did a study to see what all of our competitors were charging, and I made sure that I was above all of them. I took the most expensive machine and I went 20% above that because I figured if we're going to lose on price, let's lose on price right away.
Exactly.
Let's just we don't want them. It's not that we don't want them. We can't make money on them. So what good?
Yeah, we can afford them. Yeah,
we can't afford that customer. And I love your point about. I don't think you use these words, but I wrote it down this way, or maybe use these words: own your customer. You pick your customer. I like the idea of customers think they're picking us, and they are, and we are also choosing them, right? Because there are certain customers that are just a joy to work with. They're collaborative. They're your partner, and then there are those, right? And then there are those that just lead with price, and I find that the lower price we charge somebody, the more needy that customer is. If there's just if they understand the concept of value, they also understand the concept of maintenance and reading the manuals and loving their equipment and being part of the operation of the equipment rather than just pick up the phone or hit the send button every time something blinks.
Exactly. And we, much like you guys, we like to create partnerships, right? We don't think about selling a machine. We're creating an account, right? We're looking at a relationship that's going to last 10, 20, 30 years, right? And we're going to keep servicing that relationship for this time. And that costs money, right? We have to stay in business to be able to service them for 10 years. And we still have a good relationship with very early customers because we've been very fortunate to be able to acquire customers, right? And be fortunate enough that they invested in us to keep this long-term relationship. And that costs money. There's no other way around it. But I want to believe that those resources they invest in us are retributed 10 times fold in form of value and intelligence and insights that we're able to provide them, right? So that's a win-win relationship, and not all customers want that, right? And I respect that. And our jobs as entrepreneurs is to train our team to identify that and say, listen, if someone wants a bottom cost machine, that's perfectly fine. Give them a link to Alibaba and go step out of the way. Don't waste your time, right? Don't race to the bottom because we can't survive being the low-cost provider. And very, very, very few companies can survive being the low-cost provider, especially in California.
Yes, that's right.
Tough.
That reminds me of the Frank Sinatra lyric from his famous song that he sang in 1979, "If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere."
Exactly.
So you started in California. I started in California. People have asked me, I'm a California native. I was born here. And many of my friends, colleagues in this industry have asked me, why are you still building in California?
Yeah.
Move to Texas. There's no tax in Texas, or move to wherever, or even more commonly, why don't you build in China? It's like, well, I have no problem building in China if I lived in China. I'm just a simple person. I believe in a simple rule: buy locally, hire locally, live locally where you live. And if you can't find it locally, then go out 100 miles. And if you can't find it in 100 miles, go out to another state. And if you can't find it in another state, then go out to another country. But bring it here. And our volumes, and you're probably the same way, our volumes, we're not the auto industry or the airline industry where we can take the martini out of the, take the olive out of the martinis and save $1 million a year in fuel, right? We don't have that economy of scale. So if we pay $100 for a part or $500 for a part, it's only going to affect the sale price of the machine by a small percentage, right? It's not worth doing that. And I like hiring local people. I like buying from local places.
Exactly. It goes back to qualifying the customer, right? I mean, if you get to the game where you have to remove the olive from your martini, right? It's might not be the best place for you to be in California. Then move to Shenzhen or Wuhan or one of those places that will give you the price advantage that you need for the business, right?
Sure.
But you're right. The whole business has to be designed from its inception to accommodate where you are. And I think that's one critical, it all comes together, right? It's the product you make. You know, when we were making iRads, we were selling them on Amazon for, I think, $199, right? We're making probably $70 on each, $80 on each. So you do the math. How many of those I had to sell a month to pay rent, right? To pay the mortgage. It's a lot of radiation detectors, right?
From a margin percentage standpoint, that's an enviable margin. But from a dollars and cents standpoint, right?
Exactly.
You can't pay your mortgage with a boastful margin, right? You have you can't say, "Hey, this is a 40% margin." You know, they won't accept 40% of the mortgage. You're right. It's all about scale and how much cash is coming in, not just margins, right?
Right.
So today, Bill, you're in business years, you're 300 years old, right?
Exactly. And my hairline can tell you.
Yeah. It's like dog years, entrepreneur years. So what would the 300-year-old Bill Cardoso tell the young Bill Cardoso who was just starting Creative Electron? What advice would you give to your younger self? Or what advice would you not give to what would you hold back? Either way.
That's a good question. Maybe I'm not sure if this is this advice is useful for other people, but for me it would be incredibly useful. Is to remember that we live in it's a multidimensional world, but we're not just three-dimensional, we're four-dimensional. There's a fourth dimension called time. And to be more patient, right? That one of the many defects I have, many issues that I have, one of them is extreme impatience. And I think a lot of decisions, a lot of things I've done were rooted in my lack of patience and trying to get things fast and not understanding that sometimes doing nothing is better than doing something. Does it make sense? Right? To just slow down is the best remedy. And that's something that, age and 3 kids and all this stuff I'm starting to learn that time is a very powerful friend that's usually on your side.
Speaking of that, a business mentor friend of mine gave me advice once, and it had to do, the word time is in it, not exactly in the same context as you're saying, but if you're trying to make a decision, whether or not we should do something.
Exactly.
Take time and money off the table.
Yeah.
And see if time were not an issue, if money were not an issue, would this be something you would do?
Yeah, it's a great advice. Yeah.
Because we filter our decisions based on, I'd love to do that, but I don't have any time. Or I'd love to do that, but it'll cost too much money.
much
to,
money, yeah.
you know, and there are some very good decisions we leave on the shelf, perhaps for the next entrepreneur to exploit, that we could do if we look at things without the filter of time and money. Because a good decision is a good decision. If and entrepreneurs know this, you know this very well, you'll find the time and the money if you have the passion to do it, right? But I think the longer a business is in business, the less risk we take, which is probably good, right? I think you only have so many lucky hands at the poker table, right? At the blackjack table. You can get on a winning streak, but statistically it's not going to last. So I think the idea of managing risk as your company gets older is a good idea, but some companies take that to an extreme, and they just, they've made their money, they've made their lifestyle is at a certain height that all of a sudden they're afraid to lose what they have. When we're young and we start businesses, there's nothing to lose except our pride.
Exactly.
Now we got cars and mortgages and electric Model Ts and all the stuff that comes along with economic maturity, and we don't want to lose that. So we start making extremely guarded decisions. So I think there's a fine balance between acceptable risk, where we're savvy and we calculate the risk and the reward, and careless risk, which we all did when we were younger, and zero risk that kind of puts us in a box and just, maybe that's just a slow, soft landing, for when we retire. I don't know. But as we wrap up here, this time has gone by fast. We talked about entrepreneurs age at a fast rate, and the time goes by at a fast rate. What skills do you possess today that you did not possess when you started Creative Electron?
Patience. I've been acquiring that over the years. I'm not there yet. I'm better, but that's one skill that I'm developing, is patience.
I like how you say developing. It's a work in progress, right?
Work in progress. Yeah. Ask my team. They'll tell you. Yeah. They might disagree with the timing, but it is developing, at least in my head.
Does your team feel safe challenging you?
I think so. So. Yeah. At least I want to believe so.
Yeah. I thought that. And then I hired my daughter after she graduated college. Mm-hmm. And, she has an MBA and undergrad degree. And I thought, okay, this is great. I'm getting someone, educated that I'm close with and who can tell me the truth. And formally we'd have a meeting. I'd call everyone into the conference room and I go, I got this idea. And what about this? What about that? And then 20 people go, wow, Mike, that's a great idea. Oh my God, Mike, are you losing weight? I mean, they just like, okay. I and I don't know how much of that is real and how much of that is, they know the hand that feeds them. So then I brought my daughter in and I'd drag everyone into a meeting all excited about something. Usually it was I came back from vacation, I'd be all these ideas in my head.
Exactly.
And I'd throw them out and I'd get, oh, Mike, that's a great idea. Oh, man, no wonder you own the company, blah, 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 blah. And then I get to my daughter and she would call me MK because she didn't like to call me dad at work. Yeah. So she'd call me MK. She goes, MK, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And I'm like, okay.
That's brutal.
It's brutal. It's brutal truth, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I realized it's the emperor's new clothes, right? It's they're telling you what you want to hear. And after she went on and had grandchildren, and my grandchildren and my wife's grandchildren and her kids, so she doesn't work with me anymore. But I think that kind of was a watershed moment that the rest of the staff realized they can talk to me honestly, and they can differ with my opinion. And everything changed after that. Then really where everything before was my decisions, and fortunately I had, one or two better ones than failures. I had plenty of failures, but the ones that made it did okay to cover the failures. But it became much more collaborative, and my team became really part of the company in a way they didn't feel they were before.
Yeah, the ownership, and it's hard to get any scalability if you don't have that kind of feedback, right? Because the company becomes founder-centric, right? And as founder-centric, you end up limiting the company growth yourself, and it's very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I think we are, if we put it, we were talking about Elon Musk earlier, so let's make a space analogy. I think the founders, the entrepreneurs, are the booster rockets that were the first rockets that get the spacecraft off the launch pad and up to whatever elevation. And then those boosters get ejected off and smaller, more accurate, more precise rockets take over. And you can't,
it's a good analogy.
You can't get to the space station with a giant booster rocket, right? We'd smash into it, right? We're not very accurate. We can set a direction and a speed and an intention,
good analogy.
But we're clumsy. We're bulls in a china shop, right? Between our tempers and our patience and our egos and all that. Last question before we depart is, would you do it again? Knowing everything you know now,
Absolutely.
Would you do it again? That sounds like in a heartbeat moment, right? Is that right?
Heartbeat. No question about it. No question about it. I mean, it's better than having a job.
That's true. And I think you would agree, entrepreneurs, once you have that taste, once you've had an experience building a company, we are unhireable. We would make a terrible employee because we would be on the job maybe for 3 weeks if we're lucky. Then we'd see something that's stupid and we'd say something and we don't get what we want and we'd quit or get fired. I think we're unhireable.
Well, more likely we're just starting a new company on the side anyway, right? So
right.
Let's be honest.
Always thinking, right? Always thinking. I can do that.
To go to the next company or starting. And I have no regrets. I mean, there were hard times, many sleepless nights thinking how I'm going to make payroll next week. But at the end of the day, it's it's a lifestyle. It's I'm the kind of guy like you. We think about this 24/7, right? If I'm thinking about something 24/7, it becomes part of my DNA. There'll be something that's I have a deep collaboration and deep involvement in growing. So I'll do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Bill, you've made it through the hard part. You're no longer statistically destined to fail, right? You passed that in 2018, so good for you. I wish you all the success in the world. I don't think I need to wish that to you. I think you're already there.
Likewise.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And I know all this, I'm sure you know this too, all this could change at any moment, but I think in your company case, and certainly in mine, we sell more than boxes. In our case, we're out to make the world a better place. As corny as that sounds, as Pollyannish as that sounds, I think the companies that have a better chance at making it are bigger than themselves. They are doing something bigger than themselves, even if it's selling nerdy things like X-ray equipment and dishwashers for circuit boards. We are in this for a bigger picture, right? It's not just selling boxes, right? Anyone can sell boxes. So kudos to you. I love the way you run your company. I watched that interview between you and Phil and got some good insights from that. So we'll help each other out. And thank you especially for being my first guest. I really appreciate
Thanks for having me.
Willing to sit down and stare into the camera and talk about things like your business and your failures. Not too many people ask you about that in your social life, I'm sure. Like, hey, Bill, what'd you screw up today? So, right. But
they usually don't have the time to listen to all the screw ups of the day.
Right, exactly. Like, what day do you want to talk about this? What month do you want to talk about it? Well, thanks for being my guest today, and I wish you continued success. And I'll see you again really soon at a SMTA, board meeting or something, or hopefully at SMTAI in November in Minnesota. So we'll see what that's like. I think we'll wear masks just to keep our faces warm, even if we don't have to.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. We might have to buy a jacket, Mike.
I know, right? Us Southern Californians, I have a jacket, and I think it's the same jacket I got in like 1985.
Exactly.
I've worn it like 8
twice
times.
A year.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Bill, thanks for being my guest. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Mike.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of this very first episode of Concept to Creation. We'll talk to you again very soon. Well, we did it. We just completed our debut episode of the Concept to Creation podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're watching this on YouTube, right down here somewhere, there's a subscribe button. Please feel free to hit that button so you'll be notified of new episodes when they appear. And if you like the episode, please hit the bell and let us know you liked it, and that helps other people find the show as well. If you're listening to the audio-only version, you can subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and many, many, many other podcast platforms. So just whatever you're watching this or listening to this on, hit the subscribe button. We have several guests lined up, and I'm excited to introduce them to you as these shows continue to be produced. We have several guests, all from the EMS industry, to talk about their unique and challenging and interesting journeys as they built their businesses and exercise their entrepreneurial desires to build these businesses. They have some very, very interesting stories, and we're going to go through them one by one as these episodes progress. So again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being the debut audience, and I look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions or any comments or any particular company you would like me to interview, company founder, please drop me a line. You can reach me right down here at my email address, and that's mike@mikeconrad.com. That's Conrad with a K. And I will try and round up those guests and ask them the questions that you're curious about. So thank you again very much. We'll talk again, and I'll see you again very soon.